Hi, I'm JB Steenkamp. I'm the Knox Massey Professor of Marketing at the University of North Carolina's Keenan Flagler Business School. And I'm very honored to have been elected a Fellow of the American Marketing Association, the premier association of the world. When I started my career now many years ago, I could absolutely not even imagine uh, such an honor. Actually, when I started, the world was much more local. The academic world was also much more local. So I did my undergraduate studies in economics at Wageningen University in the Netherlands. I had an advantage there, unbeknownst to me at the time, that um, I had a lot of math and statistics courses. Because it was an agricultural university, economics was embedded in the agricultural university, but it had a uh, very quantitative bent to it. Then I did my master's, MSc, in business administration, especially marketing, finance, and OB. Then afterwards, you graduated, and a PhD program did not exist. So you could say perhaps the educational part of the PhD program would have been, like the MSc that I did at the university. But apart from that, you actually really did your dissertation research on the job. So I was a lecturer at Wageningen University as well, and I taught market research and then later consumer behavior. And then I did my PhD, during the time, whatever that was left. So I graduated, I defended my PhD in early 1989. And the topic was product quality, a topic that was very hot in the 1980s because Western companies were falling behind Japanese companies at the time when it came to quality, and people tried to understand what is quality, how much does it matter to consumers, how do consumers evaluate quality, and so that was the topic of my dissertation. And then a landmark moment afterwards happened because I was able, with some external funding of the Neil Stenson Foundation, to spend 1 year at Penn State. And there, and kind of a new world opened to me. When I went to Penn State, we are talking about the world was kind of very local. It took multiple months for an issue of JM or JMR to reach actually Europe. It's kind of inconceivable nowadays. But there I kind of learned a lot about, say, the quality differences between journals, and which kind of journals matter much more than other journals, the kind of things that I didn't really know at the time. Just one anecdote here, that my friend Michel Wedel and I kind of at one point early on in 1989 or so, we submitted an article to Marketing Science, and it was a rejected resubmit, so we thought we were out. So we submitted it to International Journal of Research and Marketing, which is the major journal outside of the United States, the official journal of the European Marketing Academy, and it got in there after some time, but we didn't realize at the time, because nobody told us, that we actually had already passed the big hurdle. And while I was at Penn State, I struck up friendship with two colleagues, Hans Baumgartner and Nimalia Kumar, and I would be writing actually a lot of papers with them over the years, and I also wrote 2 books together with Nimalia. So that was actually really a fruitful time. It broadened my horizon to the global arena in terms of academics, and I essentially struck 2 research collaborations, which would produce a lot of papers over the years, and also friendships along the way. Afterwards, I returned to Wageningen, and then I shortly thereafter went to the Catholic University of Leuven in Belgium, where I spent for some time. I became a full professor there, and then I moved to Tilburg University, where I spent some years before I moved to the US in 2006, where I was chairman of the marketing department for 12 years. So during my career, I've had the privilege to work with a lot of people, and I'm very privileged with them. Those are people that were at the time that we started to collaborate. They were also already a faculty member, assistant professor, associate, full professor, and also with PhD students, which then went on with their own career. And that has been that has been a great experience, generally speaking. And I've looked back on that. I mean, what were successful collaborations? Which collaborations perhaps were a little bit less successful? And I learned a couple of things. One of the things is, uh, at least in my case, what had been successful is that I collaborated with people that had complementary abilities to mine, but they were also partly overlapping. That is that we could understand of each other what we were doing, so we could really, push each other towards better things. But we did have certain other qualities that kind of together made it stronger. So, for example, I've worked a lot with one person who was really very good in terms of the details, who was a little less strong in coming up with, say, the big research ideas, but very good in a sense executing it in the details. Now that kind of made like a great combination in some aspects. And I've worked some other things with people that were extremely mathematical, I could understand what they're doing, they could understand what I was doing, and in collaboration we were able to create better papers. So if you are looking for people to work with, a great place to start is to work with people that have complementary yet overlapping abilities. A second thing that I found is crucial is that you actually like the other person, because you have to work a lot with them. You have to interact a lot with them. And if you like to interact with them, it is just a heck of a lot more, I would not only say more pleasurable, I think it's also more effective, because in that context, you get better ideas and you reach out to each other more. You also have to trust each other, that what you do, that you keep your word, the other person keeps their word, that you do it right. What I have found to be less important is that the other person is very experienced. At least I have not had the opportunity in my work to work a lot with people that were much farther than I was, because I came from this world, from Europe. In the time, it was not as well developed in terms of marketing science as it is now. So I worked with people like Michel Wedel, and then Hans Baumgartner and Nimalya Kumar, and terrific PhD students like Inge Gijskens and Martijn de Jong. And so I never really benefited from being guided by a more experienced person. I think it helps, but at least my life shows it is not as crucial, perhaps, as the fact that you have these overlapping yet complementary abilities, and that you really get along well. When I look at the type of research and the research topics that I studied, there is often a lot of advice that you should focus on a particular topic. And honestly, I think that's good advice. But I must also admit, full disclosure, that I've not done that. I have studied a number of different research topics over the years, so I haven't really focused on, let's say, this focus strategy. While actually I do think there are disadvantages to that, what I have found, at least for myself, is that by focusing not on one topic, but having a broad arena, I kept myself more motivated. If I was tired about one topic, I could work on another topic and then come back to the first topic. So intrinsic motivation sometimes is going to be higher if you have a broader research portfolio. Now, that doesn't apply to everybody. It worked for me, at least. I can still be very interested in different topics now, because each topic has new challenges that I don't know. When I'm starting a particular research project, I don't know the answers to it, which to me at least, is intrinsically motivating. But there are multiple ways to Rome, and for you this may be different. So when I started, you know, my research career, which started in 1983, you know, then I started to work on my dissertation after I've completed my master's studies. Up till now, I've had just the privilege of working with great colleagues on a lot of different topics, and also much of my work is externally funded, which meant that I had to convince, say, you know, a money provider. Sometimes there would be, by the way, science foundations. Sometimes it would be companies or industry associations. Why that is relevant to them, and that sometimes was challenging, but it actually forced me to think a bit more deeply what I was gonna do before plunging into it. And one final thing is there, that some of my biggest research streams, my research on private labels, my research on response styles, were actually not only inspired, they were triggered by talks with managers of large companies that were bringing up the challenge that they did not understand it, and that had to do with private labels, for example, but other research that went into, you know, international data that they kind of brought up. You know, it's our experience that you cannot really compare these scores. What do you think about it? And I was triggered by, because they asked these questions. Those were premier companies. That it inspired me to say, well, actually, I don't know the answer either. Perhaps this is, and they don't know it, I don't know it. Let's look at the literature, and the literature doesn't give the answer either. So actually, let me study this. And I think this philosophy is certainly not, you know, contradictory to AMA's philosophy of essentially bringing academia and practice together, to essentially academia feeds practice with relevant knowledge, but on the other hand, practice also gives input to academia to do things that are beneficial to both sides. So to conclude, I'm very proud to be officially a fellow of this organization that has meant so much to marketing academics and marketing practitioners. Thank you.